and to ensure that we have the recorded version for. So the meeting is already recording now. Thank you. So joining us this evening is Professor Simplice Asongu, one of the most renowned African economists that I ever met, and I will tell us shortly. So this episode 3 is crucial because publishing has become a crucial factor in an academic journey, either as a scholar or working in research or think tank. For those of us joining us for the first time, in episode 1, it was a debut episode that commenced with the launch of DIaDeRC. It was held on the 28th of May 2023. And like I said, so if you miss it that day, please never mind. The recorded session is available, and also the exercise for each of the session. Then the second episode was on grant writing and grant winning, which is the practicality of grant winning and execution. So today, also the recorded version is available. So I think we have shared it on our platform. Today we are going to this crucial topic on publishing on reputable outlets, drawing from those who can call insiders, either as reviewers or editors or member of editorial board. So this is the third one today. And of course, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back for episode 4. And again, after 2 weeks, again, we'll be back on episode 5. So each series has 5 episodes. So this is series 1.0. After this episode 1 to 5, we move on to series 2.0. So join me as we move on to this episode. By agenda, I've mentioned it. After this opening remark, I will introduce the guest speaker who takes out for 25 minutes, and then we have time to ask questions. Please do ask questions as he's presenting or we're presenting. You can be writing it on the chat or the note session, so we can take them up as we have the time later on. Who is Simplice Asongu? For short, he is holds a PhD from Oxford Brookes University in UK, and is the lead economist and director of the African Governance Development Institute, AGDI, based in Yaoundé, Cameroon. He's a distinguished visiting professor at University of Johannesburg, South Africa, and he's also the lead economist and director of the European Extra Mile Center of African Studies, based in Belgium, and is the lead economist and co-director of another center based in the Central African Republic, in Banjul, to be precise. It's one of the most published. When I say most published, you will see why. Most published African economists that I have ever met. He's a reviewer for many journals, editor, and also a member of many editorial boards. Now, some of you thought I've done some publishing work, at least. So when you compare mine and with his, you will know that I'm still beginning. So he's one of those economists or scholars that have always put me on my toes, because when I think I'm trying, I will see that so you compare my Scopus page with about 113 articles, with his own, with about 449 articles, you can see that there's a wide gap. That's why there's other person to bring today to join me than this most widely published African scholars, with H index of over 50, as at last time I checked, and mine is just about half of his own. So you can see that he's worth learning from this expert scholar. Also, I'd like to mention that he is one of the advisory board members of DIaDeRC. But when the idea of DIaDeRC came on board, he's one of those who contributed in governing the idea into reality. And in terms of publications, published about between 2019 and 2021, we published about 5 articles in different journals. Okay, which most of them are reputable and Q1 journals. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can clap your hands with either digitally or physically, as I welcome these accomplished African scholars, Professor Simplice Asongu. Prof, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Osabuohien. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Osabuohien, for the very eloquent presentation. I am quite humbled, but I must also confess that the publication agenda is a humbling experience, and even PhD candidates can reject the papers from a distinguished professor. So,
Yeah.
dear participants, thank you for attending this African Scholars Mentoring Network Series. My thanks, obviously, is extended to Professor Evans Osabuohien and the DePECOS Institutions and Development Research Center for this laudable initiative of sharing ideas and experience that are relevant in our collective effort of contributing to knowledge for Africa's development by means of scientific publications. We expect this bootcamp to be very interactive, and I therefore count on you to not only attend, but to actively participate, especially as it pertains to the question and answer session. My brief speech or presentation will be centered around publishing in reputable scientific outlets. The next slide, please. So the presentation will be centered around 6 main strands. I'll begin by giving you insights into choosing the right publication outlet. I'll then discuss how to understand the review process. I would also provide you with some compelling insights on how to write a good manuscript. Then discuss how networking and collaboration is also important in the whole process. I'll provide you with insights into how it is necessary to be resilient and persistent if you want to emerge victorious in the whole school of publications. Then conclude with some insights into what constitutes a contribution to knowledge and some elements of scientific scholarly communication that should be taken into profound account when you want your paper to actually stand as a distinct contribution to knowledge. The next slide, please. So as far as choosing the right publication outlet is concerned, there are several elements that should be taken into profound account. The first is knowing the publishing company that is hosting the journal. We have standard publishing companies like Elsevier, Taylor & Francis, Springer, Sage, Emerald in the Science, and you name them. Now, a publishing company like Elsevier has the reputation of hosting publication outlets that are promising and top tier. So if you are going in for a publication outlet and it is already hosted by a publishing company such as Elsevier, then you should already know that you are publishing in a promising tier or top tier scientific outlet. Then there's another factor, the word count limit. Some journals impose a word count limit of more or less 7,000 words. And these are mostly journals that are hosted by Emerald Publishing. So before you even complete the paper, you should already know which journals you are targeting. As far as Elsevier journals are concerned, they can accommodate word counts that exceed even 10,000. The rating is also another factor that should be taken into profound account. There are many rating criteria. You have Skimago, you have impact factor, you have ABS, which is the Association of Business Schools. This is mostly used by researchers in the UK. You have ABDC. This is for researchers in Australia. You have DHET, the Department of Higher Education and Training, which is mostly used by researchers in South Africa. Then for our Francophone brothers and sisters, you have the CNRS, which is Comité National de la Recherche Scientifique. So even before you decide on which publication outlet to choose, there's a criteria that you have to take into profound account, and this criteria varies depending on your locality and depending on your language of expression. Then it is also worthwhile to engage distinctive articles in the publication outlet that you are targeting. For instance, if you are publishing in the Journal of Business Ethics, it is worthwhile that you engage journals, papers that have been published in the Journal of Business Ethics when motivating your study or when discussing other sections of the paper. Then it is also worthwhile to position your paper as an extension of an existing study in the publication outlet. I'll be more precise. For instance, if you are writing a paper and you just motivate the paper by saying, well, to the best of my knowledge, nobody has done what I'm trying to do. You know, at times it sells, at times it does not sell. At times, editors, for the benefit of doubt, may send your paper to for a peer review. At times, they may doubt and reject your paper. By positioning your study as a direct extension of a paper in that publication outlet, I am making allusion to the fact that if Professor Osabuohien has published a paper in the Journal of Business Practice in 2023, you would state that after engaging this broad literature, the paper that is closest to the present exposition is Osabuohien 2023. These are the similarities between the present study and Osabuohien 2023. And then these are the distinguishing features between the present exposition and Osabuohien 2023. So does the fact that you actually engage distinguishing features between your exposition, that is the study you are writing, and a paper that has been published in that publication outlet, is enough motivation for an editor to want to move your paper forward, to want to take your paper beyond the editorial phase and send it out for peer review. Then the number of authors is also a relevant factor. As of 2022, Emerald Publishing took into account the fact that you have paper mills and publication mills now in India and China, and that there is this phenomenon of free riding. Some authors just pay to put their names in journals. So they have some journals that are hosted by Emerald Publishing have actually adopted a policy of not accepting papers that have more than 4 authors. So if you're publishing a paper, if you have a paper that has more than 4 authors, you should know that most or some Emerald journals would not consider the paper for publication. Then the possibility of inviting co-authors during the revision process. This is another fundamental factor, not least because I think if it's a minor revision, it poses an issue with some journals, especially as it pertains to journals that are hosted by Emerald. As of now, you need to substantially motivate why you want to add an author during the revision phase. If your paper is hosted, or if your paper is being published by a journal that is hosted by Emerald Publishing, unlike journals that are hosted by Elsevier, where you can add a name even when submitting corrections to the proof, provided other authors accept that the person you are including as a co-author actually contributed to the writing of the manuscript. Then the last factor is the threshold of similarity. Some journals have actually adopted a threshold upon which they decide whether the paper should even be considered by other criteria or not. Normally, what most editors do is that when you send a paper, they scrutinize it for similarity. If the similarity in some journals is above 20%, the paper is automatically desk rejected. If it is below 20%, then you have, if it is below 20%, so to say, then you've passed the first round. Then they may consider other criteria that are relevant in assessing whether whether the paper is of editorial interest or not. By editorial interest, I'm making allusion to whether the paper is, falls within the scope of the a journal, whether it engages distinctive literature published by the journal. Whether it is a relevant contribution to knowledge, especially in terms of the motivation, the data, and the methodology, and the findings and corresponding policy implications. The next slide, please. Then, understanding the peer review process. There's a time factor here, which is one of the most relevant. Young researchers should be aware that it normally takes between 6 months and 6 years for a paper to be published upon completion. That is, by the time you finish a working paper and you put in the public domain, you should be patient enough for the paper to be published in 6 months or 6 years, depending on whether you're lucky or on other factors. If you're lucky, it is published in 6 months. If you're unlucky, you would have to be patient for at least 6 years. Then when you have submitted the paper, you could start sending reminders 3 months afterwards. This would actually help the editors to hasten, quicken the review process, or to contact referees and remind them that they have to submit their reports timely. Then you also have to exercise patience, as I've said, and do not engage in double submissions, because submitting the same manuscript in more than one publication outlet at the same time may tarnish your scientific reputation. The referee is king here, and your tone in responses is very fundamental. You have to swallow your ego and know that at times, if you are so provocative and annoying in your responses, the referee may take offense and recommend your paper to be rejected. The corresponding author also at times end up working more than the first author. I would be specific. At times, when a paper is rejected, it takes about an hour or two to find another suitable publication outlet, which means that when I'm corresponding author, if the paper is to be rejected, say about 20 times before it eventually gets accepted, I would allocate between 20 and 40 hours just to look for another publication outlet. So it is already time consuming to be a publication author in terms of looking for alternative publication outlets when the paper is rejected. And it is also important to note that during the publication process, when you have received the proof from the production department, you have to comprehensively go through the paper because you have the final chance to correct any typographical and grammatical mistakes. At times, it could take you about 5 to 8 hours just to respond to the queries and submit the corrected proof. And this time is necessary because after your paper has been published in print, when you publish a corrigendum is normally mistakes that must have that have been noticed post publication. When you publish a corrigendum, it is normally construed as overly carelessness on the part of the scientific community from the scientific community. I am not stressed up. It is too hot here. So the next point is you should always be prepared for rejections. That is, you should be psychologically prepared that the paper will get rejected. Let me just articulate this point with an example. If you're targeting top-tier scientific outlets and you know that the acceptance rate is more or less 5%, probabilistically speaking, you should know that the paper has to be rejected at least 19 times before it eventually gets accepted. So when you receive the first rejection, the second rejection, and so on, up to the 19th rejection, you shouldn't take it as though it is something personal. It is just a rule of the game. You should consider rejection as part of the game. So by extension, you should not take rejections very personal and start fighting with editors, because at the end of the day, that will not help you, especially for future submissions. And then you should also take rejections within the spirit of constructive consideration, not least because rejections always offer you an opportunity to improve your paper before submitting to the next publication outlet. The next slide, please. So crafting a compelling manuscript. These are some points that I have for you. You should strive for top and promising tier publication outlets. By top and promising tier publication outlets, I am making allusion to the criteria, the ranking criteria that I alluded to before. Then you should also design the article with the publication outlet in mind. I have mentioned Professor Osabuohien as an example that if you're publishing a paper in the Journal of Business Ethics, you can extend a paper that was recently published in the Journal of Business Ethics. And if by so doing, you would improve the editorial interest of your manuscript. You should also tell a coherent story by making sure that all the sections fit together. The introduction, from the introduction to the concluding section, passing through the literature review, the theoretical underpinnings, data and methodology, and the empirical results and discussion sections. Then take stock of your contribution to knowledge. At times, is it inductive research or deductive research? Is your contribution empirical or theoretical? These are points that you have to revisit in the introduction and in the concluding section in order to sell the paper. I may discuss this afterwards to elaborate detail. Now, you should provide something unique. And by something unique, I'm making allusion to something provocative that is actually selling. You could challenge the status quo. What example can I use to illustrate this point? As far as inductive research is concerned, inductive research is when you actually contribute to theory building. That is the theory. The paper is not exclusively based on an extant theory, but you go on the premise that applied econometrics is not exclusively based on the acceptance and rejection of existing theories, and that a study based on sound intuition can be a useful scientific activity. The next slide, please. Networking and collaborating. Some may disagree with me. You may have various conceptions and definitions of networking. Actually, this afternoon, I thought that I was simply to make a speech. But when I was informed by Professor Osabuohien that I needed slides, I just started, writing down my slides. So everything I'm giving you here is from my head. There is no source. I didn't use any source. So my understanding of networking is from three of collaborating, during your scientific career is from three perspectives. You have a horizontal perspective, a forward vertical perspective, and a backward vertical perspective. By horizontal perspective, I'm making allusion to the fact that you are collaborating with your peers. Vertical forward, you are collaborating, you are being mentored, and vertical backward, you are mentoring. So at the early stage of your research career, it should be, in my understanding, 50% horizontal and 50% forward vertical. These percentages are from me. It is not from another source. So it is what clarifying. So at the early stage, you are not supposed to be mentoring anybody. You are supposed to be mentored, that is forward vertical, and you're also supposed to be collaborating with your peers. You have students who do not collaborate with their peers, but they exclusively rely on mentors. It is not very, very positive, or very, very appealing. Now, at the mid stage, I take it 33%. That is a third. You should be you should be collaborating at the horizontal level at, say, a rate of 33.33%. Backward vertical, 33.33%. Backward vertical meaning that you should start mentoring. That is about a third of the collaborators should be those that you are mentoring. And then 33% for forward vertical. That is about 33% of the collaborators should be those that are still able to mentor you. Then at the established stage of your academic career, of your research career, so to say, it should be 50-50, just like the initial phase. Here, you are no longer being mentored. You are collaborating with your peers. That is horizontal collaboration. And you are equally mentoring. That is, you are allocating 50% of your time to mentoring, or of your research time to mentoring, or 50% of your collaborators or co-authors are mentors, mentees, so to say. The next slide, please. Persistence and resilience. By persistence, I mean your ability to resubmit papers upon rejection. That is your stamina. How fast is it for you to take the constructive comments in the spirit of worthwhile consideration, address, incorporate, and then you resubmit. By resilience, I am referring to how thick your skin is. How do you take these comments? Do you take them personally, or do you look at the comments beyond yourself? So this is why these two terms should be distinguished here: persistence and resilience. And once you can understand that you have to be resilient and persistent, then rejection becomes a rule of the game. Yeah. So each time you submit, you should know that, well, at some point in time, the paper will be rejected. So when the rejection comes, it comes as no surprise, because even the journals are under pressure to reject. And at times when they reject, it is not that the paper is not so much of interest, but they have to reject in order to because they only have space to accommodate about 10% or 5% of submissions. So, in a nutshell, the probability of acceptance should be a motivating factor for you to resubmit your paper once it has been rejected. And I always go with the example of 19 rejections before you have the paper accepted. This is my personal style, or my personal guideline. For instance, if a journal has its 5% acceptance rate, then you obviously know that your paper has to be rejected 19 times by journals in that category, journals which have top tier or promising tier scientific outlets that have a 5% publication acceptance rate, obviously have 95% of papers rejected. So if you have a paper that is constantly submitted to top tier publication outlets and the paper is rejected 19 times, it's not yet bad luck. It is not yet bad luck. If the paper is accepted before it is rejected 19 times, then you are lucky. If it's accepted after it has been rejected 19 times, then you may be unlucky. So it is a rule of the game that papers are rejected. It is just a rule of the game. So don't take it personal. Don't go mad at editors and don't start, writing to rephrase, aggressively. Then beyond the first round of review, you should also be prepared to have your paper rejected even upon revision. At times when you're invited to revise and resubmit, you already start thinking that, well, this paper will be accepted at the end of the day. No, about a third of papers, even after revision, still end up being rejected. So you should not start, congratulating yourself too early until the paper has been accepted. The next slide, please. Now, I wanted to close this brief presentation by actually discussing what actually constitutes a contribution to knowledge. And I have 3 strands here. I've structured my thoughts in 3 strands. The first pertains to the elements of style that you adopt in scientific scholarly communication as far as the introduction is concerned. I have in mind responses to 5 main questions when I am motivating a paper in the introduction. What is the problem statement? What has been done to address the problem statement in the extant literature? What are gaps in the engaged literature? And how does this proposed study aim to address these identified gaps? And the last one is, how is this positioning relevant to policymakers in terms of either practical or main policy implications? Practical implications are implications that are relevant to entrepreneurs, while policy implications are those that are relevant to governments. And in order to improve your chances of having an appealing motivation, it is always worthwhile to engage literature that has been published over the last during the previous 2 years. For instance, if you're writing a paper in 2023 and your introduction is clouded or inundated with studies that are published that were published in 2023 and 2022, your study is most likely to be sent out for peer review. Not least because the editor would sense that you have read non-contemporary literature. You have also read contemporary literature, and you are positioning your study not on non-contemporary literature, but on contemporary literature, which means that you are positioning your study on current issues, being debated in the scholarly literature. Then it is also worthwhile to engage a distinctive study. As I may articulate the example that I used previously. After you have discussed or highlighted broad literature, it is always worthwhile to say, well, this is the closest study to the literature, to the present study. And these are the shortcomings of this closest study to the literature. These are the similarities between my study or our study and this closest study to the literature. These are the distinguishing features. And this is how our improvement will be relevant as a scholarly and policy contribution. On the second strand on contribution to knowledge is there was a debate that came up in 2014. It was the Jinkam case. And Jinkam is a top scholar from Holland, and there was experience he had of self-plagiarism or text recycling. So the Committee on Publication Ethics actually came up with a definition of what constitutes a contribution to knowledge in 2014 after the Jinkam scandal. And it is articulated that a contribution to knowledge that is a scholarly contribution to knowledge, should have three main distinguishing features. The motivation should be different, the findings should be different, the policy implications and results should be different. This is when you may be using the same data and methodology. In other words, you can use the same data in terms of geographical scope and periodicity, the same methodology, and the same theoretical underpinnings. But a distinguishing feature between a previous paper, a prior exposition that has used that same data, methodology, and theoretical underpinnings, and the current study will be based on whether, first, the motivation is different, second, the findings are different, and third, whether the policy implications are different. Now, there's an acceptance threshold of similarity, as I've had occasion to precise earlier. Most journals go with 20%. If it is below 20%, it is considered further whether to send for peer review. If it's above 20%, they simply reject. On the 16th of March this year, there was a communique from Elsevier that Authenticate, which is the software used to assess similarity, I don't call it plagiarism, similarity, that it will be upgraded from Authenticate V1 to Authenticate V2. And Authenticate V2, the programming will be tailored such that papers with a 100% similarity index will not be construed as plagiarism, not least because a 100% similarity index may simply be 0.5% of information from 200 different sources, which means that if you're writing a paper and you consult 200 different sources and you just recuperate or use 0.5% from each of these sources, your paper is a robust research, yet the similarity index is 100%. So when you look at the paper with the high similarity index, look at the references. This is what we have been arguing, because at times you may send your paper out for peer review, and the editor just rejects the paper on the grounds that it has a similarity index of about 25%, whereas most of these similarity is traceable to perhaps the definitions of variables, table footnotes, and countries, which you cannot change. So the next slide, please. And then I could not conclude without discussing issues surrounding artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence assisted tools. As a matter of fact, on the 17th of March this year, Elsevier actually published guidelines on artificial intelligence assisted tools in scientific scholarly communication, in scientific writing to be more precise. And there are four main points to be taken into profound account. That there are four main protocols. That artificial intelligence, first of all, should be used exclusively to improve language and readability. That is the first point. The second point is it should be applied with human oversight and control. The third point is these technologies cannot be co-authors. For instance, we all know only too well that anything that substantially contributes in a paper should be a co-author. Any person that substantially contributes to a paper should be co-author. So if artificial intelligence substantially contributes in a paper, that artificial intelligence is supposed to be considered as a co-author. That's not acceptable as a publication ethic. Then you have to disclose the use of artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence assisted technologies when you recourse to them, irrespective of how much you rely on them. So these are the four guidelines that should be taken into profound account when you are using artificial intelligence in scientific scholarly communication. The last, I don't know if there's a last slide. Okay, thank you very much for the kind attention. I look forward to your questions, and I hope that my answers will be adequate enough.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If you can clap with your virtual hand or your physical hand, please. Thank you, clap. All right. We have heard from the which I call the insider perspective. Like I mentioned earlier, was Asongu has published very widely, and then is also one of the you can see Scopus page, over 449 articles in Scopus with H index of 50, and is a reviewer and also editorial board member of many journal articles, top tier journals. So please question, if the can put it on the chat, that will be better for us. So just curate, and but if it's so burning in your heart, you want to say it, you can raise your hand and we can allow you to speak. But the chat will be better for us to avoid echoing or noise. Victoria, goodness, please help us curate as many of the questions so we can read them out for Prof. Prof, you can also check the chat bot, the chat.
The questions are still coming in. A lot of people are typing, so I'm waiting to see them.
Okay, what they are typing, we keep. Maybe I should start mine, so we just take them together because of time. But as soon as we have a question, please, Victoria, pause, we take them. While they are coming, we thanks so much, Prof, for your insight, and particularly, like I said, this bootcamp is not to give us theories; it's from practical experience, and we have seen Prof come around to give us his own experience from his own learning curve. And I remember, personally, I love this collaborating matrix he gave, the level of horizontal to the level of forward and backward vertical. Yeah, I love this. So each of us can begin to rate ourselves. Where are we? Am I at the 50%, 50% horizontal and forward vertical? Or am I at the 33% forward backward vertical, or is the horizontal and forward vertical? Or am I at the 50% backward vertical or horizontal? So this is a personal reflection. Why the questions are coming, I will just continue with the second part of the presentation, so we can have maybe all these questions treated at the end of the presentation for me. So basically, Prof has given us so much meat to chew. While we are taking some questions, I will just share my thoughts.
Sir. There's a question that says, what are the criteria of identifying these reputable scientific journal outlets?
Okay, one, we'll keep that. The second one, so just collate as many as we can collate, and I think we have it there in the slides. Okay, but I would like Prof to speak.
Someone says, Prof, please, can you differentiate top journals by quarter? That is quarter one, quarter two. I think the person is referring to Q1 to Q4 journals. Okay. Sometimes it's difficult. How can one prepare for, to publish in either of the Q1 or Q2? So okay. Then someone also asked, how can someone reference AI like ChatGPT when used in writing?
Okay, that's very good.
Okay, someone said, okay, I would like you to share more perspective on rejection. You talked about 19th being your threshold with an assumption of 5% rejection rate. What can be done to improve the probability of acceptance within submission?
Okay, for Adesimo coin.
Yeah, people are still typing. In fact, the thing says multiple users typing.
About this. Okay, Prof, do you want to take them now, or I go with my one? We'll take together at your.
Sure. Let me take them. I'll be happy to address them now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, you need to refer me to any slide. You can refer me to it. That has the answer. Okay.
I have 4 questions here. Yes. The first is the criteria for choosing promising and top-tier scientific outlets. As I did mention in one of the slides, these criteria vary depending on where you are based as a researcher, depending on your language of expression, and depending on some other personal preferences. I mentioned the ABS rankings, that is the Association of Business Schools in the UK, that is used by researchers in the UK. I mentioned the ABDC criterion, so to say, that is used by scholars in Australia. I mentioned the DHET, that is used by researchers in South Africa. I also mentioned the criterion used by our French-speaking brothers and sisters, that is the CNRS, which is the Comité National de la Recherche Scientifique. Then this takes me to the second question. I have left out Schemago for the second question, because the second question is about how to distinguish between the top 25, the top 50, the top 75, and so on. So you have Schemago that actually distinguish publication outlets in terms of quantiles. You have Q1, which refers to the top 25%, Q2, which refers to the top 50%, and so on. And this is easily accessible via Google. Then reference to GPT chart. This is the third question. Now, I think the concern was how we should reference GPT chat. I will just recall the 4 information criteria that are relevant when using ChatGPT or artificial intelligence in scientific scholarly communication. These should be used exclusively to improve readability and language, apply with human oversight and control, cannot be co-authors, and you should disclose that you relied on them when writing a paper. So the reference is not in terms of you citing, GPT chat as an author, but in acknowledging, you go to the acknowledgement section and then you actually state that I relied on GPT chat for, some whatever. And then probably the editors will want to question you further to know if the GDP chat or the relevant artificial intelligence actually contributed substantially to the manuscript or not. And as I said before, if it substantially contributed to the manuscript, it cannot be co-author, so automatically the manuscript will be rejected. Then the last concern is about improving the probability of acceptance. Now, what the person asking the question should know is that publishing is also a lucky game. Some of us, we still have our papers like rejected 30 times before they eventually get accepted. So you should count on luck, and you could improve your odds of having the paper accepted by, as I clarified, reducing the similarity report to below 20%, having the contribution to knowledge clearly articulated in the motivation of the study, making sure that you engage distinctive literature from the scientific outlet that you are targeting. Make sure that you motivate the paper or you position the paper on contemporary references, that is reference papers that were published in the previous 2 years. Use updated data, a methodology that is quite robust in terms of addressing concerns, pertaining to endogeneity. There are 4 main concerns of endogeneity: variable omission bias, reverse causality or simultaneity, the unobserved heterogeneity, and measurement errors. So the explanation techniques that you consider should take into account these perspectives of endogeneity. Then your findings, as well as the policy implications, should also be relevant. By policy implications, I'm making allusion to the fact that if you have distinct sections for implications for theory and implications for the policy, your paper would have an edge over other papers in terms of whether it is considered for publication or not. In a nutshell, you can improve your odds of having your paper accepted by improving your elements of style in scientific scholarly communication, as I have explained. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Okay, hold on, Victoria. For sake of time, I'll just present short presentation I have, and then we can now take all the questions at the end. I think that will help us save time. So please keep the comment coming while I'll just give us my own personal insight, and then we'll probably stay around. We'll just take it together. Prof, I hope that is okay with you. Hello, guys. Prof? Okay, I think it's muted. So I'll just while it is coming, I'll just take this few slides I have, and then we are good to go. Yeah, I will endeavor that I don't repeat what he has said, but make some allusion to some personal points that are relevant. Uh, First and foremost, to keep us going in terms of managing or dealing with rejection. So let's start from the basis. Why do you have to publish? Why do you write? I think one thing I personally see is that if you start a manuscript with a burning issue in your soul that you want to pass across, there's something in you that you want the world to hear. So even if you send it out, it's rejected again and again, you will still continue because there's something you are sure you want to pass across. For example, the mentorship paper that I wrote with Karakara is still with the editor for the past almost 1 year. But I told him, Karakara, let's just put it as a working paper. So we don't keep it there. We don't know how long it will come out. Because there's something we want to pass across to the world. Okay, so if you have something in your soul as a burning issue, that will keep it going. Even if it's rejected, you can repackage it and send it across because there's something you want the world to hear from you. So that's one thing that will keep us moving. Then two is that you want to be part of the scientific community. You want to contribute. So because when you write, here I said you are even communicating with the unborn audience. We hear of Aristotle. We hear of John Maynard Keynes. We hear of Adam Smith. What if they didn't write those things in their time? We may not have heard of those stories. So the same thing will help you as you are writing. You are saying that you are communicating something that may be relevant even to unborn generation. So that also keep it going, even if it's rejected. You say there's something I want to put across, which should be part of that help you going. Then of course that will help you to choose your topic, method of analysis, as well as the outlet you want to send your paper to. There is thing I learned from a codextra workshop since some years ago, since 2007, and that has helped me a lot. There are about 4 points they said that are relevant in terms of writing or why should you write to publish. One is that you have something you want to say. You have something you want to say. This talk about the topic or the aim of that paper. So there's something you want to say. Then two, you cannot choose. You cannot say why you should say it. In other words, why is something you want to say? Why is it relevant? We talk about the relevance. Which part talk about the gap or the contribution your work is bringing on board. Then two, or sorry, three, you now want to choose the best way to say it. In other words, what methodology can I use to communicate this information? Or what material do I need? Method. Then number four is that you now say it, talk about the discussion, the analysis, and then after you have said this, you keep quiet, you conclude briskly. I think from my own experience as an editor, as a reviewer, is that many people at the conclusion, they will start another fresh story, which is like undue repetition. So one, your conclusion should be as brisk as possible. That will not bring out the distinguishing feature of the paper. So basically, there should be a close marriage between your introduction and your conclusion. Your conclusion should reflect the key takeaway, which Prof has discussed shortly just now regarding those three points you mentioned on the contribution. So these five things I love for Professor, I would say it's really relevant for us. One is that you have something to say. Two, you are saying you should say why you should say it. Three, you should choose the best way to say it. Then four, you say it, and then five, shut up, keep quiet. And that's enough. Conclude briskly. The another thought I want to share again is whether some normally ask me, should I mind my discipline or not when choosing my topic or when choosing the outlet? Well, it depends on you. But personally, I would advise as much as you publish, you should also mind the context. I think when we did the grant writing proposal or grant proposal, I mentioned the CFA. The CFA talk about the context. Your work should reflect a given context. Although there's need for multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinary research, or transversal research, it's also good to be mindful of your area of discipline. For example, I think I assessed a number of professors from different universities within and outside Nigeria. They also papers are the discipline of the to be a professor. So there's need also mind what obtains in your discipline as you write. Of course, there's need for multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, or transdisciplinary research. So the next one I also mentioned that you should also, I think, Prof says the issue of collaboration. So you collaborate as much as possible. He has mentioned the issue of collaborating horizontally, or forward vertical, or backward vertical. So all of that also enhance the area of the how your paper will be accepted, and also the quality of input in that paper. Of course, the discipline differs. What happens? The social sciences may differ from sciences, although things are changing now, but there's still need to mind your area of discipline while you publish. Okay, then that also help in the area of what kind of methods do you want to choose? Okay, should I go the way of quantitative? Should I go the way of qualitative? Should I go the way of mixed method? No one is bad. No one is the best. It depends on which one is able to communicate your research. Remember, I said that you should have what to say, and then see what you say, then they choose how to say it. So if going the way of mixed methods is the best way to say to communicate your research, go ahead. But if your research can be best in qualitative, go ahead. If it's quantitative, go ahead. But don't try to merge all of them in one paper. That may be difficult to know which kind of research you are actually engaging on. So the next thing I want to also say is that what should I even publish? Some ask me a number of times, Prof, what should I even publish? Well, it depends on you, whether you can take publishing as a hobby, either way you publish because you enjoy publishing, which some persons see it, or you can see it as a calling or an assignment. If you are actually a researcher in the academia or the research think tank, of course, there's need it's part of your calling or assignment. Then much more so, it's also be relevant to your contribution to scientific community, of it's relevant for an academic, relevant for promotion or recognition. Much more so, which also I appreciate, is that you want to be part of the scientific community in that area of research. That when persons who are referenced in that area, you are part of that people making a contribution in that particular area. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, when you publish, you have the opportunity to communicate or to teach unseen audience or forthcoming generations. So these are why you need to publish. Okay, and I saw one thing from Embrad, which I want to refer to shortly. I'm able to be an editor for Embrad for 2 years between 2019 and 2020, when I did as guest editor for 2 special issues. So one thing is that there are about 7 points why you should publish. One is that it's good for your career development. So 2, in most institutions you are affiliated with, whether university or think tank or agency of government or private sector, it could be a requirement for your institutions. Then much more so, in the last 2 episodes, we're talking about grant writing or grant winning. So most grant funders want to see that the area you're asking them to fund you, you have some publication in there. So it is good for a requirement for funding. Much more so, as a publish, is as a way of improving your research endeavor or research work. And then it gives credence or help you to gain approval as a key player in that subject area or as a subject expert. Of course, you just 6 like 5, you contribute to knowledge in that area. Then much more so gain reputation and then enhance your network, which has a way of enhance your network. The habit that this pyramid I started working on in the year 2020, which I call the Research Academic Impact Pyramid. It's a pyramid that I developed that will help us to know which stage we are. I think the best stage you are is wherever you are, is good to start moving upward. So I have a matrix there, climbing the ladder on knowledge, they are climbing the ladder on the research or academic relevance. So no matter where you're coming from, whether you just have a first degree, BSc or MSc, you start with what I call the knowledge consumption. Here you read widely, read broadly, and then as you do that, you have it to what I call academic or research adaptability. You begin to know which area of this area studies or research do I have interest in, do I want to measure on, do I want to focus on, and then that will help you to start writing. Start writing, you are what I call the knowledge production. You are able to contribute to knowledge. Okay, which I call knowledge production, and that has a way of enhancing your research or academic visibility. So in that area of research you are writing, publishing, people want to begin to know you in the area, which is giving you some visibility in research and academic. Then you move on to what I call knowledge moderation. At this point in time, you're able to contribute to what people are writing, either as a reviewer, as a reviewer, so you can review and contribute to moderate what has been written. Okay, make your input. So no, not this way. So you're able to contribute by moderating people's knowledge. And in that case, you are gaining what I call the research or academic stability. And then, of course, at this level, integrity is very crucial. And then you move on to what I call the apex or the established stage, they are called the knowledge stimulation that can lead to academic or research immortality. How do I mean? So about knowledge stimulation, you're able to define research interest, define research field. At this stage, you're able to bring out thematic topic areas or topic that you want people to write as an editor, either in the book project or in a special issue. So you are the one that is now bringing out knowledge that you want people to contribute to. So in that case, you are stimulating knowledge, and then by so doing, you become very relevant in that area, which will lead to what I call ultimately knowledge immortality, academic research immortality. So this is the pyramid that will help us to assess ourselves as we journey on in publishing in the reputable outlet. I see a few time remaining, so I will just take us few other. And then this one, Prof said it eloquently. How do I choose my outlet? Okay, the mention of Simago and others. And then two, some publisher like Siva, even Emerald, how would I call a journal finder? So if you if you click on this link, it will take you to the page. It will ask to put the topic and the abstract of the paper. So as you do that, it will show you journals in a Siva or Emerald that has that may see that paper as relevant. So that's one way. So you can use a journal finder. And then two, you can check your references. If you do a good job, you might have started some references in that particular area. So your references will give you an indication to where you can likely send a paper to. And like a Prof mentioned just now, that when you are referencing a particular journal, it means that you are aware of that journal, their guidelines, and also their method of their fundamental operational guidelines. So it could also be a good way to know where to choose your outlet. Then, of course, you can ask your colleagues or mentors to know where this paper, where do you think I can publish it? And then also you can respond to calls or special issues. This one will help as a way of showing you the current area of research interest that people are responding. And if you're on the platform, thankfully, while you see calls being shared, and so you can respond to either of those calls that are relevant to your area. Of course, it's also institutional preferences are there. Some other ABS, which Prof mentioned, or private or Scopus. So institutional guidelines are also a way that can guide us to know outlet. You also mentioned issue of preferences. You mentioned ABS, Jeff, or those in America, Journal of Economic Literature has a catalog of that. So that has been said by Prof. So I don't want to go into details on that. As I will try to run towards ending my own, open the flag for Q&A and response, is that how do I choose my production outlets? There's no point repeating this one. Prof said it very clearly, okay, and she also rejected it, also be done clearly. Look at the, so I'll leave that here. Then how do I do with rejection? Just to add to what Prof said, rejections are the opinion of the reviewers. Let's get that clear. Reviewers are human beings. They are not angels. They are not sent, so they can make error. They can be wrong. As a reviewer, as an editor, I have made some mistake that when when the authors take up on this, you cannot take another look. You will find out that they actually have a point. So rejections, like a Prof said, rule of the game. So, and let's know that reviewers or editors, they are not angels, they are not sent. They are humans. They can make mistakes. And when I discuss this point, there is case of Ekelov that comes to mind. He wrote his paper in, I think, around before. It took about 3 years before he got it published. The paper was called "The Market for Lemons." I got to him. It's a story when he won the Nobel laureate. The paper was published in 1970, but he won the laureate in 2001. So you can imagine the distance. It says some of the journal is sent to said, when has economy become this when has economy become this ordinary, that on the topic market for lemons. So it got so many rejections before it was accepted. So that's a big part that was accepted by many journals, later won a Nobel laureate. So that would tell that every point in time we face rejections, which was said just now that it's a rule of the game. So don't give up. Don't give up. Every researcher has been rejected more than once. I think probably just give it about 19 times for a paper as a threshold. So it's not, don't take it personal. You can ask them for comments. If they give you comments, you revise and try again, and resubmit elsewhere. Keep trying. Like I said, no stopping, no waiting, no parking. Keep trying. So how do I try again? Of course, you take time to look at the comments. If it's valid comments, you can change them. Some, if it's not valid, well, you knock it out and look for the next journal to send it to, and then you can update the paper, resubmit. Like probably just now that rejection, it can also be a plus because it can give you another time to reflect on the journal on the paper and make it better. So repeat whenever necessary, hopefully not too often. So to get it published. Try to wind up now. So what makes a publishable update? I said this, I mentioned clearly about the introduction, how you're able to make sure that it contributes to policy gap, and then have a currency of reference materials. Not that I didn't garnish your introduction with at least two years lag. So I published a writing paper in 2023. You have more of 23 papers, 2022, 2021 at most, and not as core of your citation and introduction. Okay, and this has been said by Prof. I would to repeat that. Again, so in closing, if you want to start when you are good, you will never start. I learned from a mentor. So I said too, it is better to send a manuscript and it is rejected than to keep it in your shelf or on your laptop. Send it out first. If it's rejected, you get comments, you can repackage it. If not, you try again. So don't be afraid to send your work out. Every person have rejected, received a rejection. I mentioned it, even Nobel laureates have at one point time. But the prof mentioned 19 times. Some have a rejection of 7 times. But in recent time, I think would come a prof. I also gave up to, so personally, until your work is rejected 70 times, I don't give up. You reject and you publish, you package, send again and again and again. So it is 70 times. So which means every paper can be published if you can take due diligence. The measure of persistence and resilience. On that note, I say thank you for your time. So we'll now go on to questions as we look at welcome Dr. Victoria for what you have in the question and we answer it. So whichever way, either Prof or me can answer any of the questions. So Prof, I hope you see there. Victoria, over to you. More questions?
Thank you very much, Profs. Thank you very much for the insight. So let me continue with the questions that I have saved up. Someone asks, it says regarding rejection, if a particular publisher rejects your paper after improving on that paper, is it advisable to still send the paper to the same publisher?
Okay, go on to the next second one.
Okay. What are the important factors to consider in getting a Q1 journal? Seems like Q1 is more difficult to get than Q3 or Q4.
Okay.
When the paper is rejected 19 times, Prof, what is that singular thing one can do, one should do before resubmission to avoid further rejections?
Okay. Go on.
What are your thoughts on journals that are published in the big names, Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, etc., but not included in the Thomson Reuters Master Journal list? Another person asks, please shed more light on practical and policy recommendations? Please shed more light on practical and policy recommendation. Another question is, what makes a journal to be discontinued, and how can such journals be avoided?
Okay.
Yeah. When
Okay.
more questions come in, I will let you know.
Thank you, boy. So, Prof, you can take as many you can take it. I will join you on.
Thank you very much for the questions. I think I have 5 here in number, and I'll take them in the same chronology as they have been provided. The first question is about understanding whether a paper should be resubmitted to the same publisher upon rejection. I just want to rephrase the question. I think that the person meant journal, not the publisher.
Yeah.
Because we have few publishing companies that host many journals. So normally, if it is, I would go with the two fronts. If it is submitted, if it is rejected by a journal that is hosted by Elsevier, then of course you can submit to another journal that is hosted by Elsevier. This is why you now have these transfer options. That is when a paper is rejected and they think that it is fit for another journal that is hosted by the same publisher or publishing company, they give you a transfer option, and you also have a time window to accept or reject that transfer option. That is the first view of looking at the question. Now, the second is, if you can resubmit to the same publication outlet after rejection. It depends on the reason for rejecting. It may be a reject and resubmit decision. If it's a reject and resubmit decision, they are inviting you to resubmit after taking into account the reasons for rejection. Now, you may not be, happy with the motivations of the referees that actually guided the editor-in-chief's recommendation or the editor-in-chief's decision to reject the paper. It is always worthwhile that you formulate a very polite and friendly rebuttal to the editor-in-chief, arguing for why you think that your paper shouldn't have been rejected. So it is possible, but most often times it is not even worthwhile to start arguing with the editor-in-chief unless it is being rejected after, say, 2 or more rounds of review. Because when it is rejected at round 0, your motivation for rebuttals, are less than, if you had revised it twice before it's eventually rejected. So in summary, it is always, you can consider resubmitting, provided your reasons or your motivation for wanting to resubmit are really worthwhile, provided you think that, well, these reasons can convince the editor-in-chief to change his decision. The second question is about knowing how to publish in Cure 1 journals instead of Cure 2 or Cure 3 journals. And the question is premised on the assumption that it is more difficult to publish in Cure 2 and Cure 3 journals than publishing in Cure 1 journals. I don't actually think so. Not least because, as I have explained before, it also depends on luck. You may be lucky to have reviewers that are very compassionate, that are very understanding, and they will provide favorable recommendations for the paper. You may be unlucky to have very, tough reviewers who are specialists in the field and who have, written papers in the field before, who would not consider your paper or as a worldwide contribution to knowledge. But as I have explained, in order to improve the chances of or the odds of your paper being accepted, you have to improve the elements of style in scientific scholarly communication. And by those, I am making allusion to the fact that you should reduce the similarity report. You should make sure that the contribution to knowledge is substantial, especially as it pertains to the motivation, data, methodology, findings, and implications. And at the level of the methodology, you should respond to 5 main questions. What is the problem statement? What has been done in the extant literature to address the problem statement? What are gaps in the engaged literature? And how does this proposed study aim to address the identified gaps? And lastly, how is this relevant to policymakers? And in positioning your study within the remit of extant literature in the introduction, make sure that you engage contemporary literature. By contemporary literature, we are making an allusion to, say, post-2020 literature or papers that are published, that have been written in 2023. The third question that when a paper is rejected 19 times, what to do? You just keep submitting. I made mention of 19 times, that Professor Osabuohien has made mention of 70 times. So go with the 70, threshold. Until the paper is rejected 70 times, don't be discouraged. The fifth question. There are some journals that are published or hosted by standard mainstream companies such as Elsevier, and that are not in mainstream metrics like the Thomson Reuters Social Science Citation Index. I think these are young journals. What you should know is that if a journal was launched in 2019, this journal will not automatically in 2023 be admitted into this metrics. It will take time. And then discontinuity of journals. Why journals are discontinued? This is the fifth question. This may be due to several factors. It may be because the peer review mechanism is not robust. It may be because there's a lot of favoritism at the level of the peer review process, to the extent that the editors are not robust enough in the choice of referees, and they do select, accept papers that are published by authors in their region or in their university. You see. There is now a metric used by Emerald to assess whether the choice of authors, the choice of referees, so to say, is consistent with the authors that have submitted the manuscript. I don't know how they do it, but these are measures that have been put in place to help editors provide a much more objective peer review framework. There are many reasons. Which I have disclosed, and I think Professor Osabuohien can pick up on this to
yes. Thank you so much. Just give us a practical on that. For just the last one, for Elsevier, if you are reviewing for them, they give you this platform to know, so you can select your reviewers automatically as an editor. They give you benchmark on those in region. The system will even flag if the author has a similar work in the area or not, if you're from the same region or not, or if he has a published work on that area or not. So the Elsevier has that. But issue of this continuity, if you can see my screen, just open the Scopus this live. Let's say you want to look, you're an economist, or you're in the, let's look at the Journal of Economics, for example. Journal of Economics, any journal you can put there. This, let's say this one, for example. I'll keep this one. Can just go to Scopus so you can see my screen. So if you click on this particular journal, for example, I just say Asian Journal of Law and Economics. As you go down this way, that will tell you to know whether the journal is progressive or not. First, look at the Scopus coverage. From 2010, means that the entire Scopus 2010 to present means that it's current. So they've been consistent since they entered 2010. It's like over a decade. So that will show you that this one has some possibility of progress. Not only that, it also shows the publisher. Who are the publishers? I think probably I mentioned some top publishers. I think it's a German publisher also. And then the ISN you can cross-check. And then the area, this area, social science and law, economics. And then much more, so you go down to here, the site score. So the site score here does not, is relevant, but much more to compare the tracking. So between 2022, it was 0.6. So you can see, but this tracking for 2023, current one, you can see that it's improving from 0.6 to 0.8. So, but if it's otherwise, it was 0.8 decreasing here, that shows that this journal is not making progress. So if it's decreasing, it's a flag, a red flag to be watchful. But if it's increasing between 0.6 and 0.8, it shows that this journal is it can make progress. So the continuity issue may not catch up with them. And then we can look at the percentile of the area. So it's like Q3 in the social science for law, but economics is within Q4. So these are something I want to share that we can help us to know whether the journal is making progress or not. Okay, so I don't want to answer that question. We have a few minutes remaining before we end this section. for today. 7 minutes more. Vicky, have any question again remaining, so we can begin to ask general question? Yeah.
Thank you for the responses, Prof. So there.
You are muted now.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Very clear. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir.
Again, you are muted. Isn't there a network? Yeah, Dr. Vic, you are muted. Okay, Dr. Goodness, can you help us? I'll just look at this. Okay, I can read from here. Aminat is saying, Prof, you can look at this at the chart. Say from some of us in the global south, how do we approach publication charges? Secondly, it is been an issue assessing articles behind paywall, and the cyber hub site no longer open to top journals from 2022. Please, what are the recommendations to assess papers behind such paywall papers if there are no institutional support? That's that. Thank you, Aminata. Prof, you come to that again. Then from Galimona Lumbawa from Tanzania, what if the journal have published no longer exists? Can you publish the same paper in another journal? Okay. So how these two questions? Prof, you want to respond to them? Prof, you're muted, sir. Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to take them beginning from the last one.
Okay.
As far as, there are some journals that do offer some possibilities of those that are in the south of the Sahara, to be more specific, to publish. There are times there may be even there's a waiver. If the publication fee is about $1,000, they may say those of the south should pay just 50%. But personally, I don't go with journals that require people to pay, because if you look at the amounts that are requested, these are quite exorbitant. For instance, if the submission fees is just 200 euros, that 200 euros is the equivalent of a monthly salary back in Africa. So there are promising and top tier scientific outlets that do not require any publication fees. So your strategy towards publication should also be consistent with the initial economic conditions, or with your conditions of material existence. If you know you are poor, adapt your publication strategy to your situation. Then the other concern is about whether, if a journal in which you have published no longer exists, then you can publish the same paper to another journal. I don't know what that means, but even when a journal has ceased to exist, there is still a link out there that traces papers that were published to the journal prior to its inexistence. Yeah. So don't do that, because by so doing, you'll be publishing the same paper in more than one publication outlet, which is not acceptable. Not least because when you are submitting a paper to most publication outlets, there is always a button that you have to click, attesting that the paper is not under consideration in another publication outlet, or has not been published prior to you submitting the paper to the publication outlet for consideration. There was a first question that you mentioned, my question regarding the particular publisher. I think we have already addressed this point.
Yes,
the point from Professor Dauda Musa. I think that one has been addressed, because I think we have. So before the time runs out, may I just make a point or a comment on Professor Osabuohien's presentation? He did come up with the research pyramid, which I'm seeing for the first time, and I find it very inspiring. It is just like the Maslow pyramid of achievement. By that, I'm making allusion to the fact that the fourth stage, which is the stimulation or immortality phase, is the degree of accomplishment from Maslow's pyramid of achievement. I think we should take upon ourselves the habit of promoting our own researchers. that is this Osabuohien 2022, the pyramid, we should consider citing it in our own papers, because what has actually stopped us from actually, being recognized internationally is because we ourselves have an issue with inferiority complex. That is, we have a collective psychology of inferiority complex that actually stops us from promoting our own authors. There is this Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism is a process of identity formation in which African epistemologies were actually banished. That is, it is based on inferior and superior knowledge, and those of inferior and superior people producing such knowledge. Oftentimes, when you look at an article that has been written by an African scholar, at times most of the citations and references are not, from Africans. I have the culture of allocating at least 20% of my citations to African-centric journals and African African authors, and I have no apologies about that. So we should develop this culture of promoting our own brothers and sisters, getting to read their papers and getting to cite them. It is only by so doing that we can, be more represented internationally. We can be more respected internationally. Then, before I give the floor to Professor Osabuohien, he also made mention of motivations. The primary motivation should not be money. It should not be money. I can tell you from experience, don't go for money, but the money will come naturally. It will just flow naturally. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Prof. So what a day to be here to hear you live. And then I'm happy that you're able to say yes to us. Thanks so much for your input, and particularly for making Africa proud. When I talk about African scholars, you're one of those that I respect, and today you have also proved that today. I don't know whether there's any burning question. The time is about up now. Although we started 5 minutes late, so we can buy the 5 minutes back. If there's any burning question, please let's have it now. These kind of best people, you don't see them always. So let's ask the question. I know some people joined late because of network. Don't worry, it's recorded, so you have the link later. And you mentioned issue of Afrocentric and Eurocentric. Personally, I am an Afrocentric in nature. I love that anywhere I go to, people know me as South African. And just to show that this platform using the OB Meet is an African developed net software. So since we're talking about African scholars, it's one with African innovation. It's innovation by young guys I met in Germany in 2019, and they are doing great job. Their aim is to see how we can communicate African languages. So they have OB translate, and so you can speak Swahili in Tanzania. I can hear in my language in Igbo, just like what you see go to real time, and they're making big progress. They are partnering with African Union, with ECOWAS, and that. So this network now, they when I have this idea, they give us this platform to use free of charge, and you can see it's very robust platform and very wonderful. So thanks to OB Meet for the platform, and well, thank you for bringing us back again to Afrocentricism. The Africans were the best to tell our African stories. I think that is true. Any last minute question? Thank you so much. I've gained a lot. Oh, thanks so much. Any other question? We have 3 minutes to go, and then we kind of. If you want to say a word that is very keen to your mind, that's burning, and I know you have a burning passion in your mind, you can raise your hand. You can unmute you, and then otherwise you can put on the comment or the chat session. So what we're doing that, let's just recap this CODESRA. CODESRA is another Afrocentric institution I respect, which is a Council for Development of Social Research in Africa. They do a lot of research, and particularly on Afrocentric. So let's have in mind as we go on this. There are 5 points on about writing. One is you have something to say, which are showing your title, and they have say what you say it, which is the introduction that will show the relevance, the gap, the fight, and the uniqueness of a paper. Then you have to choose. So you can choose which is the best approach. There's no one that is the best. is your kind of issue you are discussing. I will tell you which one is relevant or not. And then you discuss it clearly or analyze it, which you say it, and then you conclude quietly. I mentioned that it is good to conclude briskly. You don't have to say another story again when you are concluding. So with that, I think we are winding up to this today's episode 3 of series 1.0 of African Scholars Mentorship Network. Somebody is tapping. We're waiting for you, Nyinka. Lale, are you done? Vicky, do you have any other question that's on? We have 2.5 minutes to go, and then any other question? Any question? Again, somebody is tapping. Please type faster. We're about to close. Otherwise, you can raise your hand. We can ask you. Thank you, for it. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Adewale. Yeah, thank you, Abidemi. Thank you, Bianiju. Thank you so much. Yeah, Aminat, thank you so much. Yeah, somebody have been typing finally. Yeah, there's a question there. Okay.
The question is, how can we get the slides from the presentation?
Okay, simple. The slide will be downloaded. What I will do, I will integrate the two slides into one as the note for episode 3. Okay, just say you got 1 and 2, you get it. So what we'll do after the meeting, we'll download the video that will show the recorded session, and I will put it together with the exercise 3 for episode 3, and then we'll share the slide again, whether by email or on our we'll share the link on our platform. Okay, so normally like I do for episode 1 and 2, I'll put the link on. I'll collate the two into one, and then with permission of Professor Asongu, put it on our ResearchGate, and then we'll share the link so you can download it on ResearchGate free of charge. Does that answer your question? So you get it, both the recorded session and both the recorded session and the notes. Does that answer your question? Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Musa. Okay, so we are about to close now. Once again, let's appreciate Professor Asongu for today's session. I will stop recording now because we're done, and then we take